Hello, my dear friends. Today, I'm going to answer a question that's been given to me a while ago. It's called about 2x2 aesthetics. So, what do we mean by aesthetics? We're meaning the look and feel of adornment of 2x2s themselves and inside their homes. And the reason we're going to talk about this is because the 2x2 aesthetics are very different than many other Christians. And then we're going to discuss why they're different and stuff like that. Okay. So let's say you are a person that's never been exposed to 2x2s and you go and stay in the home of one of these 2x2s as a guest. What do you expect will happen? What will you see inside the house? What will you see in regards to the 2x2s there? Okay, so the first thing you're going to notice as you go in the door is there's no TV antenna on top of the house, so there's no satellite dishes, right? Of course, they almost all of them will have internet in the house, but in the olden days, this issue of not having TV antennas was a big thing because you could figure out in the community who was a 2x2 by driving around and see who didn't have a TV antenna. Right? Again, this isn't the pre cable TV, but anyways, sort of a little joke there. The As you go in the house, you'll notice that they have very uh, the adornments in the house, like paintings on the walls, and they won't have really any paintings on the walls. Um, they won't have um, really a large library in the house. That's kind of abnormal. They're not really into reading books, particularly serious books, anyways. Um, you also, if they do have books, it'll probably be Reader's Digests, those compilations, like 20 Reader's Digests, I think, compiled together. Um, and they're like leather bound, like as if these are real books. I don't have anything against Reader's Digest. I'm just saying it's an odd kind of book collection. Um, they they won't have really any paintings on the walls or things like that. Like what you would normally think of as art, they won't have it. Like say you went in the home of a Catholic or an Orthodox or an Anglican or a Lutheran, they would probably have some kind of religious paintings on the walls, and they certainly would have a cross or a crucifix on the walls. In 2x2's homes, you'd never see anything like that. Um, you will see somewhere like sort of a prominent area, whether it's in the main living area or something like that, where they're going to have a lot of pictures of their 2x2 ministers. They may have hundreds of group photos of 2x2 ministers. In fact, in many cases, they'll have these group photos of 2x2 ministers, which are they these are taken at these conventions and then sold to these 2x2 members, and they put them in frames and stuff. It looks as if these are actually their own family members. That's how they're displayed, like in a place of reverence for their own family members, where you would put up pictures of your children and your grandchildren. That's what they will have these pictures of 2x2 ministers. There will also be a piano in the home, and maybe on top of the piano will be where all these pictures are. But the piano is very important because they need it for when the workers or 2x2 ministers there, so they can have some hymns, play along with the hymns. Even if no one in the home actually even knows how to play a piano beyond the basics, they're still going to have a piano. Um, some of them have an electronic piano, like a keyboard sort of thing, electronic organ, if they don't have the space for a piano. The home itself will generally have, if the person has middle class, upper middle class, they're going to have it set up so that there's clearly enough extra bedrooms that these 2x2 ministers can be there almost indefinitely. Like they'll be almost like some of them even have a casita, like a small adjacent house, so to speak, that's sort of attached to the house, but it's a separate suite. But it's clear that the house will have been designed or remodeled with the idea of 2x2 ministers living in the house or staying in the house as a concern. Of course, the house will also have like a what do they call those china cabinets, I guess, with full of fine china that they're going to use for entertaining. And the entertaining, of course, is because the 2x2s have a lot of dinner parties with not sorry dinner parties not right, but dinners with other 2x2 families. And so that's kind of major part of their, let's say, social life are these dinners with other 2x2 families. The 2x2 family themselves, in terms of their own adornment aesthetic, it will be the men will be clean shaven. They will have short hair. They will be dressed conservatively. They're generally not going to be having many brand names on their clothing. Other than that, you wouldn't be able to tell them that apart from most other people. The women, of course, generally will have never cut their hair. They generally will keep their hair up on top of their head in a bun. They will generally be wearing dresses or skirts, long dresses or skirts. They will, really no exposed upper arms or above the knee, so to speak. No makeup, no jewelry except for perhaps the wedding ring and maybe a brooch. Um, they they no painted nails, of course, stuff like that. No forms of makeup really. They will not color their hair either. So if they're white hair or gray or whatever, they will never not color their hair. And they don't really style their hair. There's like no perms or anything like that. So they're very plain. So what I'm trying to point out is the 2x2 aesthetic is really an aesthetic that's very, very plain, but also it's deficient in art, right? You would not see reproductions of famous Western civilizational art in their homes, right? There's not going to be no Leonardo da Vinci's Last Supper. There's going to be nothing from Pier della Francesca. There's going to be nothing from Caravaggio. Okay. They won't have any books about these things at all. Also, in terms of other types of books about literature, there will be no books, no classical literature books. They don't read those. Right? So if you're looking for Shakespeare books, forget it. They're not going to have that. It's a home which is peasant. It's a peasant home, a peasant aesthetic, because they're in a peasant religion, to be honest. But it's a peasant aesthetic, and it's a peasant way of existence. Now, I'm not saying anything wrong with that. Well, maybe there is, but I want to contrast that now with other people in the community who probably have less money than these 2x2 families, or have less, whatever seemingly status, but whose homes inside, and we're talking again about Anglicans, Roman Catholics, Orthodox, Lutherans, and so forth, whose homes would have reproductions of famous Western civilizational art, right? So Da Vinci's Last Supper, there'd be some painting about Mary, the mother of Jesus. There'll be some painting with Mary and the baby Jesus. There might be a painting of the wedding at Cana story. Many paintings or reproductions of paintings of stories from the Bible, from the New Testament. Again, like I said, they would probably have a cross or a crucifix somewhere in the home. Their book collection would likely have religious books. Okay, 2x2 will have no religious books, no books about Christianity in their house. And in these other homes, there would probably be a substantial number of religious books talking about Christianity in some regard, some different ways, and Christian literature also, right? So, like the Brideshead Revisited book, most people have that in their house. Of course, Shakespeare books, things like that. This is very bizarre, right? Because you think, what's stopping two by twos from having this sort of aesthetic that other Christians have, particularly even Christians who are supposedly even poorer and so forth and lower status have this in their house, but two by twos don't. So it's like, well, the two by two, they see this aesthetic that the other people has as works of the devil. That this is how Satan gets you. If you have these nice, beautiful things, um, this is how Satan's going to get you. And this is what they're told by the two by two ministers. Now, what's hilarious is that let's take these art reproductions that I just mentioned that will be in these homes. What the art themselves, why did this art even exist? Well, because up until very recently in human history, almost all humans were illiterate. And so for a good part of the last 2,000 years, in order to spread the gospel and spread Christianity, it had to be done in visual form. So this is why all these churches you go to in Europe are full of paintings and sculpture, because that's how you could talk to people who are illiterate. That's how you could, you know, tell them the stories without having to speak to them directly all the time. They can't read on their own, obviously. So if you have the story told visually with paintings, and if you go in those churches, you'll see that. Like some of these paintings I've just mentioned, that's one painting in a series about a particular story. I mean, just take for example, almost every one of the churches I've mentioned, they have things called the Stations of the Cross, which is, I think it's 12 or 14 steps of Jesus's Passion Week, right, from Palm Sunday to his crucifixion and resurrection. So, and you go in these churches, they have these little stations with a little picture, and people stand there and they meditate on this. Well, having these stations across are there as a visual reminder, a visual way to talk to the congregants, as opposed to having text, which they couldn't read. Right? So, these of course these paintings, these sculptures, and things which are now in reproduction in people's homes, they're not the devil trying to get you, as two by two suggests. This is the way Christianity got you. This is how people became Christians. This is how upside down these two by twos their thinking is. So you may have to think, well, what is really going on here? Why are two by two ministers telling their congregants not to have any of this Christian aesthetic? Well, because if you had this Christian aesthetic in your house, very soon you'd probably stop being a two by two. You'd realize what Christianity really is. Right? And you'd realize you've been sold a bill of goods by these two by two ministers that is nonsense. That you're being trapped in a cult. So that's the crux of the matter. It's really sad. Their two by two ministers are cutting off these poor people, poor two by twos, from experiencing their own civilization. It's totally nuts that when you talk to two by twos, even ex two by twos, who they are for the most part totally bereft of understanding of their own civilization. If it wasn't for some public schools they had to go to, they would know nothing about Western civilizational things. I mean, like I mentioned, the literature, the art, the sculpture, the architecture, philosophy, theology, nothing. Music. I'm neglected to mention, but the music aesthetic. Again, in two by two homes, there'd be no mechanisms to play music. So they never had radios, of course, but they also didn't have any record players. No tape players that could play. Well, if you had a tape player, it was only for making recordings of yourself. It wasn't for playing music. There'd be no music. Whereas you go into a Christian's home, they're going to have all kinds of Christian music, right? They're going to have uh, wonderful chant music. They're going to have wonderful um, symphony music. They're going to have all kinds of choral music. Handel's Messiah, for example. There's enormous amounts of Christian music. I mean, the vast majority of music of our civilization has been created prior to very recently is Christian music. And it's wonderful, absolutely most beautiful. Bach, for all of Johannes Bach's music, is fantastic. and these 2x2s are completely cut off from it. Who's cutting them off? The 2x2 ministers won't allow it, right? They're depriving them of access to their own civilization. And it's all under this rubric of the 2x2 aesthetic of being, plain and not being corrupted by the world. Well, it's not about corruption. It's about not exposing them to the beauty of being a Christian, right? Of being in communion with their fellow Christians. That's why this thing is a cult.